Yeah, good day to you. We shall look at the features of poetry today. There are some specific features which you may refer to as characteristics that poetry has. These features or traits distinguish poetry from other genres of literature. These features are signs that you see in a piece of writing that tells you that this piece of writing is a poem. First of all, there's atmosphere. Every poem has an atmosphere. The atmosphere is more like the undercurrent of the poem. The atmosphere is a mental disposition of a particular poem. May I make it simple? The atmosphere, like a typical atmosphere in life, it connotes, it refers, it relates to mood. The atmosphere is a feeling in a poem which the poet hopes to translate or transfer. The atmosphere is also a feeling which the hearer or the reader of a poem perceives. For example, if you have a poem that talks about death, the atmosphere is going to be one of sadness. You get? There's going to be sadness around the description of that poem. That is the atmosphere. Even though you won't get to see this sadness, but you will know that it is prevalent. It is around the poem. So, the atmosphere is a feeling that surrounds, that encapsulates a poem. It is the undercurrent that the writer hopes to use in passing the message across to you. I hope you get. When you're reading a poem of love, there's an atmosphere of excitement. There's an atmosphere of hope, of sweetness. There's an aura of joy and perhaps beauty. So these are atmospheres that you won't get to see with your real eyes, but then you know that they exist and they are powerful. Secondly, canto. Canto, excuse me. Canto is a feature of poetry. You know, just like in a prose, in a novel, you have chapters. You have one chapter, you have second chapter, you have third chapter. Canto is the poetic order of chapter. It is the poetic order of chapter. Canto is to poetry what chapter is to prose. For example, in your poem, which may be very long, this is usually used in reference to very long narrative poems. When your poem is really very long, there are some poems that can run into several pages. There may be need to categorize the different stanzas into parts. You may have like first stanza here to here, second stanza here to here, third stanza here to here, and then you call all of this one. And then you go on to the second part, and then you have three stanzas. So in a poem where you have three stanzas called as part 1, and the poem continues into part 2, which has three stanzas, it has part 3, which also has three stanzas. The breaking or the arrangement of narrative poems, which are usually long in such manner like this, is what canto is. So you may say these first three stanzas, which are part of part 1, belong to the first canto. I hope you understand. Now let's move on to stanza. Stanza is usually the collection of the breaking of a poem into parts. You know, stanza is to poetry what paragraph is to prose. You may say stanza refers to paragraphs in a poem, but that's the wrong way to put it. But it helps you get a picture. When you see a poem which is a bit lengthy, even for poems which are not long, they're usually broken into parts. You may see 4 lines grouped together, and then let me show what I'm saying. If I say for 95 years I have traversed the stretches of the cosmos, dining with paupers and condoning the pompous. For me, this may be my first stanza. For 95 years, I have traversed the stretches of the cosmos, dining with paupers and condoning the pompous. If I stop here and move and give a little space here and start from the next line and say, now I have, and then I write on and on and on. Let's say I have 4 lines here, and I give a bit of break and have another 4 lines here. This first part here is my first stanza, and the second part from here to here is my second stanza. So stanza is the grouping of lines in a poem in such a manner that your poem appears structured and presentable in this manner. Now let's go to a verse. A verse is usually like a stanza. It is believed that a verse is a line of thought in a poem. For example, if you are a Christian or a Muslim and then you go through your Bible or your Quran, you'll notice that you have verses there. There are verses in the Bible, there are verses in the Quran. These verses are more like stanzas. They are more like, not necessarily stanzas, they are more like lines. But because they are longer than the usual lines in a poem, they are called verses. You may also, in poetry, refer to a stanza as a verse, and you'll not be wrong. If you refer to a stanza as, if you refer to a verse rather, as a line which runs into several lines, as a sentence which runs into several lines in a poem, you'll not be wrong. But most regularly, a verse is used interchangeably with the stanza in poetry, with similar arrangement like I've presented before you a moment ago rather. So now we shall go to couplets. What is couplets? Couplets is, or it refers rather, to the last 2 lines of a poem that usually rhyme. The last 2 lines of a poem that usually rhyme. So when somebody says there's a couplet in a certain poem, what that person is referring to is that the last 2 lines in that poem rhyme. Now let's continue with the 6th type of, or 6th feature of poetry, and that is triplet or tacet. Triplet or tacet. This refers to the rhyme of 3 lines. it is a rhyme of 3 lines. For example, when I say I'm thinking of an example. Let them blaze if they don't like my face. They should phase. Let's assume this here is phase. So let them blaze if they don't like my face. They should phase. So there's an A rhyme scheme here. When you look at it, A. Let them blaze if they don't like my face. They should phase. So A, when you have a poem of 1, 2, 3 lines with rhymes at the end of the 3 lines, such a poem is referred to as triplet or tacet. Now let's go on. The next is enjambment. By enjambment, what we refer to is run-on lines. Run-on line. So, for example, I'll give an example here of what enjambment is, or what run-on line means. If I say, I have traversed because there's no space here to complete this line, if I bring the line to this place, it becomes a run-on line. I have traversed the stretches of the cosmos. Really, this line should just maintain a line in the poem. But because there is no space on the paper or on whatever platform you've written the poem on, you then take the remaining part of this line to this part. It becomes a run-on line. It is still one line of poetry, but it has run on to a second line, so it is a run-on line. Yeah? That is what enjambment means. Run-on line. The next is imagery. What is imagery? Imagery refers to it refers to the pictures that a poem sends to your mind. When you read a poem, sometimes you see what the poet is describing to you in your mind. Images come to you. So imagery is the ability of a poet to paint pictures to you through words. It is also the ability of you, the reader or the hearer of a poem, to see the things that the poet is talking about. So when you say a poem has imagery, what you're saying is that the poem is so descriptive that you can see the things that the poem talks about. If I talk about the sun, or for example, let's use this popular poem, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Listen to the lines. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. There's the use of imagery in this poem, because the word twinkle, twinkle, little star brings to your mind a star which is twinkling. In your mind, you're seeing the image of a star twinkling. And then the writer says, how I wonder what you are. You may then begin to wonder, The writer then goes further to say, up above the world so high. In your mind, when you read this part, up above the world so high, your mind goes back to the image of a star that you know, that it is high up. It is high up there. It is high up there. This picture plays in your head. It is like you're watching a movie. And that is what imagery does for a poem. It makes a poem real. It shows the reader of a poem pictures. And these pictures, these mental pictures created in the mind of the reader helps understanding. If, as a poet, you can help in building images and pictures in your readers' minds, then you'll have succeeded in creating beautiful pictures. The next is meter. We've talked a bit about this when I taught you about sonnets, and I said in sonnets iambic pentameter is used. So we talked a bit about this. Meter refers to the orderly presentation of stressed and unstressed syllables. Orderly presentation of stressed and unstressed syllable. In a line of poem, when you have stressed and unstressed syllable in an orderly manner, like in the case of iambic pentameter, where you have one unstressed, one stressed, one unstressed, one stressed. In such a case, it is meter which is at play. And for the 10th feature of poetry, it is mood. Mood is the feeling that the poet wants you to have when you read his poem. And mood is the feeling that you have when you read a poem. When you read a poem, does it make you sad? If it does, then in that case, the mood is one of sadness. When you read a poem, does it make you happy? If it does, then the mood of the poem is happiness. In writing a poem, consciously in some cases, the writer, the poet, thinks of the mood that he or she wishes to push across. In a lot of cases, it is the mood in which the writer, the poet, is in that determines the mood of the poem. If a poet is angry at the point of writing the poem, then most likely that poem is going to be one of anger. That poem may likely evoke sadness in the readers. When the poet is happy, when the poet is elated, when the poet is ecstatic, very, very happy, and he or she writes a poem, then most likely there will be the transfer of the happiness in the poet's mind. So the poem, and whoever reads this poem will most likely be happy if the poet has done a good job. Now we shall look at quatrain. Quatrain. Quatrain refers to a poem of 4 lines. Quatrain refers to a poem of just 4 lines. And usually the poem has this kind of rhyme schemes. A, A, B, B, A, B, A, B, A, B, B, A, 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 A. These are rhyme schemes. We shall come to that when we get to this point. But an example of a quatrain is this poem written by me. As you can see, the poem has 4 lines. Just 4 lines. And it goes thus: if truth be told, when you get old, then you will know life is a show. If truth be told, when you get old, then you will know life is a show. What rhyme scheme is used here? Let's take a look. The first line rhymes with the second line. So this is A, A. The second line rhymes with the third line rhymes with the fourth line. So this is B, B. As simple as this. So this is a quatrain. Moving on, the next is rhyme. Rhyme is a very, very key feature of poetry. I mean, we've talked about rhyme or rhymes in so many ways in the course of this class and previous classes. Rhyme merely refers to the similarity in vowel sounds in poetry. Similarity, rather, of vowel sounds in poetry or in a poem. Usually, this happens at the end of lines of a poem. But it doesn't mean that you cannot have rhymes within lines, inside lines. You can have words that sound alike. You can have words with similar vowel sounds in a line of poetry. We don't call that rhyme though. We call that assonance. Assonance. But when these rhymes, when these words, when these vowel sounds come at the end of your lines of poetry, then it becomes rhyme. Rhyme. An example of rhyme is this poem here. As it is obvious, as it is apparent, the first and the second lines have similar vowel sounds at the end. So there is told, O, and there is old, O, told, old. There's also know and show. So this similarity in sounds is what we call rhyme. And next we have rhyme scheme. Just as you have rhymes, you have rhyme scheme. There are patterns of rhyming. Rhyme is not just about ensuring similarities at the end of your lines of poetry. You need to know the particular rhyme scheme that you want to adopt. Otherwise, your poem is going to become a free verse. You know, free verses are poems that have rhymes which do not have, lines which don't have regular rhyme patterns. Yeah, if you want your poem to have a certain rhyme scheme, you've got to be sure of what rhyme scheme you wish to use. These are examples of rhyme schemes. You can choose to use AABB as we have used here, or you use ABAB, whereby you have this line, you have this third line here. You have the first line rhyming with the second line, and then you have the first line rhyming with the third line, and you have the second line rhyming with the fourth line. You get? So, whatever nature, whatever type of rhyme scheme you choose will help to make your poem beautiful, but this is what rhyme scheme refers to. The next is rhythm. Rhythm is the conscious play on the syllables of your poem such that it sounds musical. Rhythm is the conscious use of specific syllables in a poem to achieve musicality. Yeah? You know what a syllable is? Like in Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Or perhaps I should use this poem talking about rhythm. Yeah. If truth be told, if you look at this poem well, you have just 4 syllables in the first line. If truth be told. Next is when you get old. 4. Third is then you will know life is a show. All of the lines in this poem have just 4 syllables. It is not accidental, it is conscious. The poet has consciously ensured that he uses a regular syllabic structure whereby every line has only 4 syllables. And there's a musicality to that. If truth be told, when you get old, then you will know life is a show. There's a rhythm. The rhythm is an organized flow of sound in a poem. An organized flow of sound. Just like in Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, how I wonder what you are, up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. You can hear the flow. There's a musicality around it. So when a poem has this conscious musicality, then rhythm has been used. Rhythm helps to make your poems beautiful. So when you write, be conscious about the words that you choose. Choose words that help to improve the rhythm of your poem. That way you achieve more beauty. Refrain is the next. And refrain is an expression that comes up at intervals in a poem. Refrain refers to a certain phrase or expression that comes up at certain points in a poem. For example, in Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, you'll notice that the poet consciously repeats Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star after virtually every stanza. So that's a refrain because it's a phrase which is repeated virtually all across the poem. I also have a number of poems I've written with refrains. Like, I have a poem titled Tears from an Old Man's Eyes. And in that poem, I ensured that I kept repeating, these are the tears from an old man's eyes, after every stanza. And that gives the poem beauty. If you know this poem, My Mother, who sat and watched my infant's head when sleeping on my cradle bed, you'll notice that my mother comes at the end of every stanza. That is a refrain. So when you see a poem that has a certain group of words, or a certain phrase, or a certain expression repeated at intervals in the poem, just know that the poet has used refrain. The next is subject matter. The subject matter is the idea behind the poem. Every poem has an idea behind it. I mean, that idea can be, the idea can be war, it can be famine, it can be pandemic. Whatever the idea is behind your poem is the subject matter. But then, the theme of a poem is usually the lessons that are learned from the poem. Every poem, most poems teach certain lessons. Most poems have overriding message that they pass across, or that they hope to pass across. So the message that a poem hopes to deliver is the theme behind the poem. I mean, you may be wondering why a theme is different from, or how a theme is different from a subject matter. They are different because the subject matter is the primary focus of that poem. It is about that which the poem talks. The subject matter is the issue, the substance of the poem. Let's say my poem is about a wicked man who cheats people. A wicked man who cheats people. What is my subject matter in this poem? The subject matter is the wicked man who cheats people. The man who is wicked and cheats people is my subject matter. And then what is my theme? The theme is the message I'm trying to pass using that subject matter. The theme here is that it is not good to cheat. That is the message I'm trying to pass using the subject matter of the man who cheats people. Finally, we shall look at tone. Tone. The tone refers to the voice attitude of a poem. I mean, I don't know if any book will put it this way, voice attitude. I mean, that could be my coinage, voice attitude. It could be my coinage. Even voice can have an attitude. Your voice can have an attitude. So the tone is the sound of a poem. It is the attitude in the voice of a poem. I can say, I like you in different tones, and that will determine my mood. So usually, the tone in the poem determines the mood. If I say, I like you and I want you to succeed, the tone here conveys honest likeness for you. But then if I say, I like you and I want you to succeed, my tone here, aside from my facial expression, tells you my mood is not one of likeness or happiness for you. So every poem has a tone. The tone can sometimes be determined by the diction. We talked about diction initially. Diction. Diction refers to the use of language. So the words a writer chooses in a poem will tell the readers or the listeners the tone of that poem. It will also reveal the mood of the writer, of the poet. It will also determine what mood you get from the poem. So tone here is the sound. It is the voice. It is the attitude, the mental disposition of the poet, and how that poet comes across through the words that he or she has written or has spoken. I tend to use written or spoken because a poem is not only read on the pages of a paper. A poem is heard. A poem is recited. As a matter of fact, the beauty of poems is in hearing. The beauty of poems is in recital. So, having been done with the features of poetry, I shall recite a poem right now to end the class. Which poem should I recite? Can I have this poem titled I Love Her? But don't preempt and expect that it is a romantic poem. Listen to the lines and find out at the end. I love her. I love her like a fresh scar. I love her like a rotten egg, and daily freedom from her I beg. I love her bright morning smile. I love the woes that daily she piles. I love how she strongly loves, withholding her pleasures and shielding her curves. Oh, what a lover, Nigeria, a name whose origin is Niger area, decided by strange foreign lovers who are worse than gold robbers. I love the enticing wealth around her waist, wealth, which I don't need to continue this, it's a long piece, so. But then, know one thing, it is not a love poem, it's a political poem. But you can get the tone of the poem through my voice. You can get whatever mood you would have gotten from your other end based on my tone. Some of the other features I talked about initially are in this poem. With this, we've come to the end of this class. See you next.